we're gonna give this a go. So I'm Tegan, just a quick introduction. I've always wanted to enjoy audiobooks, but I don't because I feel like the people who read them, through no fault of their own, just don't bring enough passion to the story. So I'm gonna give it a go. And because I'm not licensed or making money or anything, I can only read books in public domain. So I'm starting with The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. And I'm just going to read a chapter a day. Well, probably not every day, but a chapter at a time. And if you like it, follow, subscribe. If you don't, that's okay. I'm really just doing this for me. So here we go. The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, Chapter 1, Marseille, The Arrival. On the 24th of February, 1815, the watchtower of Notre Dame de la Garde signaled the arrival of the three-master Pharaon from Smyrna, Trieste, and Naples. The usual crowd of curious spectators immediately filled the quay of Fort St. Jean, for at Marseille the arrival of a ship is always a great event, especially when that ship, as was the case with the Pharaon, was built, rigged, and laden in the dockyard of Old Phoenicia, and belongs to a shipowner of their own town. Meanwhile, the vessel drew on and was approaching the harbor under topsails, jib, and foresail, but so slowly and with such an air of melancholy that the spectators, always ready to sense misfortune, began to ask one another what ill luck had overtaken those on board. However, those experienced in navigation soon saw that if there had been any ill luck, the ship had not been the sufferer, for she advanced in perfect condition and under skillful handling. The anchor was ready to be dropped, the bowsprit shrouds loose. Beside the pilot, who was steering the Pharaon through the narrow entrance to the port, there stood a young man, quick of gesture and keen of eye, who watched every movement of the ship while repeating each of the pilot's orders. The vague anxiety that prevailed among the crowd affected one of the spectators so much that he could not wait until the ship reached the port. Jumping into a small boat, he ordered the boatman to row him alongside the Pharaon, which he reached opposite the creek of La Réserve. On seeing this man approach, the young sailor left his post beside the pilot and, hat in hand, leant over the ship's bulwarks. He was tall, lithe young man of about 20 years of age, with fine dark eyes and hair as black as ebony. His whole manner bespoke that air of calm resolution peculiar to those who, from their childhood, have been accustomed to face danger. "Ah, is that you, Dantès?" cried the man in the boat. "You are looking pretty gloomy on board. What has happened?" "A great misfortune, Monsieur Morrel," replied the young man. "A great misfortune, especially for me. We lost our brave Captain Leclerc off Civita Vecchia." "What happened to him?" asked the shipowner. "What has happened to our worthy captain?" "He died of brain fever in dreadful agony. Alas, monsieur, the whole thing was most unexpected. After a long conversation with the harbor master, Captain Leclerc left Naples in a great state of agitation. In 24 hours he was in high fever and died 3 days afterwards. We performed the usual burial service. He is now at rest off the Isle of El Gilo, sewn up in his hammock with a 36-pounder shot at his head and another at his heels. We have brought home his sword and his cross of honor to his widow. But it was worth his while," added the young man with a sad smile, "to wage war against the English for 10 long years only to die in his bed like everyone else." Well, Monsieur Edmond," replied the owner, who appeared more comforted with every moment, "we are all mortal, and the old must make way for the young, otherwise there would be no promotion. And the cargo?" "It is all safe and sound, Monsieur Morrel. Take my word for it. It has been a voyage that will bring you in a good 25,000 francs. They were just past the round tower. As they were just past the round tower, the young man shouted out, 'Ready there! Lower topsails, foresail, and jib!' The order was executed as promptly as on board a man of war. 'Lower away, and brail all!' At this last order, all the sails were lowered, and the ship moved almost imperceptibly. "And now, Monsieur Morrel," said Dantès, "here is your purser, Monsieur Danglars, coming out of his cabin. If you will step on board, he will furnish you with every particular. I must look after the anchoring and dress the ship in mourning." The owner did not wait to be invited twice. He seized a rope which Dantès flung to him, and with an agility that would have done credit to a sailor, climbed up the ladder attached to the side of the ship, while the young man, returning to his duty, left the conversation to the individual whom he had announced under the name of Danglars, and who now came toward the owner. He was a man of 25 or 26, of unprepossessing countenance, obsequious to his superiors, insolent to his subordinates, and besides the fact that he was the purser, and pursers are always unpopular on board, he was personally as much disliked by the crew as Edmond Dantès was beloved by them. "Well, Monsieur Morrel," said Danglars, "you have heard of the misfortune that has befallen us?" Yes, poor Captain Leclerc. He was a brave and honest man, and a first-rate seaman, grown old between sky and ocean, as a man should be who is entrusted with the interests of so important a firm as that of Morrel and Son, replied Danglars. "But," replied the owner, watching Dantès at his work, "it seems to me that a sailor need not be so old to understand his business. Our friend Edmond seems to understand it thoroughly and to require no instructions from anyone." "Yes," said Danglars, casting a look of hatred on Dantès. "Yes, he is young, and youth is never lacking in self-confidence. The captain was hardly dead when, without consulting anyone, he assumed command of the ship, and was the cause of our losing a day and a half off the Isle of Elba instead of making direct for Marseille. As captain's mate, it was his duty to take command, but he acted wrongly in losing a day and a half off Elba unless the ship was in need of repair. The ship was right as I am, and as I hope you are, Monsieur Morrel. It was nothing more than a whim of his part and a fancy for going ashore that caused the delay off Elba." "Dantès," called the owner, turning toward the young man, "just step this way, will you?" "One moment, monsieur," he replied, "and I shall be with you." Then, turning to the crew, he called out, "Let go!" The anchor was instantly dropped, and the chain ran out with a great rattle. In spite of the pilot's presence, Dantès remained at his post until the last task was accomplished, and then he added, "Lower the flag and pennant to half-mast and slope the yards." "You see," said Danglars, "he already imagined himself captain." "And so he is," said his companion. "Why should we not give him the post? I know he is young, but he seems to be an able and thoroughly experienced seaman." A cloud passed over Danglars' brow. "Your pardon, Monsieur Morrel," said Dantès, approaching. "Now that the boat is anchored, I am at your service. I believe you called me." Danglars retreated a step or two. "I wish to know the reason of the delay off Elba." "I am unaware of the reason, monsieur. I only followed the last instructions of Captain Leclerc, who, when dying, gave me a packet for the Maréchal Bertrand." "And did you see the Maréchal?" "Yes." Morrel glanced around him and then drew Dantès on the side. "How is the Emperor?" he asked eagerly. "Very well, so far as I could see. He came into the Maréchal's room while I was there." "Did you speak to him?" "It was he who spoke to me, monsieur," said Dantès, smiling. "He asked me some questions about the ship, about the time of her departure for Marseille, the route she had followed, and the cargo she carried. I believed that she had been empty, and I the master, he would have brought her, but I told him I was only the mate, and that the ship belonged to the firm of Morrel and Son." Ah, said he, "I know the firm. The Morrels have all been ship owners for generations, and there was a Morrel who served in the same regiment with me when I was garrisoned at Valence." "Quite true, Monsieur Morrel," exclaimed, delighted. "It was Policar Morrel, my uncle, who afterwards became a captain. Dantès, you must tell my uncle that the Emperor still remembers him, and you will see tears of joy in the old soldier's eyes. Well, he added, giving Dantès a friendly tap on the shoulder, you were quite right in carrying out Captain Leclerc's instructions and putting in the Isle of Elba, though if it were known that you delivered a packet to the Maréchal and talked to the Emperor, you might get into trouble." "How so?" said Dantès. "I don't even know what the packet contained, and the Emperor merely made such inquiries as he would of any newcomer. But excuse me, monsieur, for one moment. Here are the medical and customs officers coming on board." As the young man departed, Danglars approached. "Well," said he, "it would seem that he has given you good reasons for dropping the anchor off Port Pharaon." "Most satisfactory ones, dear Monsieur Danglars." "So much the better," replied the purser, "for it is never pleasant to see a comrade neglect his duty." Dantès certainly did hear his, and there is nothing more to be said on the matter. It was Captain Leclerc who ordered him to call at Elba. Talking of Captain Leclerc, hasn't Dantès given you the letter from him? No. Was there one for me? I think that in addition to the packet, Captain Leclerc gave him a letter. What packet do you mean, Danglars? The one Dantès delivered at Port Pharaon. How do you know that he had a packet for Port Pharaon? Danglars turned red. I was passing the captain's door, which was ajar, and saw him give Dantès the packet and the letter. He has not mentioned a letter to me, but if he has one, I have no doubt he will give it to me. Then, Monsieur Morrel, pray don't mention it to Dantès. Perhaps I am mistaken. Just when the young man returned, and Danglars retreated as before. Well, Dantès, have you finished now? Yes, monsieur. Then can you come and dine with us? I beg you to excuse me, Monsieur Morrel. I own first visit to my father. All the same, I greatly appreciate the honor you pay me. You are quite right, Dantès. I know you are a good son. And do you know if my father is quite well? He asked with some hesitation. Oh, I believe so, my dear Edmond, but I have not seen him lately. At any rate, I am sure he has not wanted for anything during your absence. Dantès smiled. My father is proud, monsieur, and even had he been want of everything, I doubt whether he would have asked of anything of anybody except God. Well, then, after this first visit has been paid, may we count on you? Once more I must ask you to excuse me, Monsieur Morrel. There is yet another visit which I am most anxious to pay. True, Dantès, I had forgotten that there is at the Catalans someone who is waiting for you with as much impatience as your father. The fair Mercedes. Dantès smiled. Well, said the shipowner, now I understand why she came to me 3 times for news of the Pharaon. Upon my word, Edmond, you are to be envied. She is a handsome girl. But don't let me keep you any longer. You have looked after my affairs so well that it is but your due that you should now have time to look after your own. Are you in need of money? No, thank you, monsieur. I have all my pay from the voyage. That is nearly 3 months' salary. You are a careful fellow, Edmond. Say rather that I have a poor father. Yes, I know you are a good son. Off you go to your father. I too have a son, and I should be very angry with anyone who kept him away from me for a 3 months' voyage. I have your leave, monsieur, said the young man, saluting. Yes, if you have nothing more to say to me. By the way, before Captain Leclerc did he give you a letter for me? He was unable to write, monsieur, but that reminds me I shall have to ask you for a fortnight's leave. To get married, first of all, and then for a journey to Paris. Very well. Take what time you need. It will take us quite 6 weeks to unload the cargo, and we shall not be ready to put to sea again for another 3 months. But you must be back in 3 months, for the Pharaon cannot sail without her captain, he added, patting the young sailor on the back. Without her captain, did you say? Cried Dantès, his eyes sparkling with joy. Oh, if you really mean that, monsieur, you are touching on my fondest hopes. Is it really your intention to make me captain of the Pharaon? If it depended on me alone, my dear Dantès, I should give you my hand saying, it is settled. But I have a partner, and you know the Italian proverb, Chi a champagne a pardon. But if half the battle is won, since you already have my vote, leave it to me to get my partners for you. Now, off you go. I shall remain here a while and go over the accounts with Danglars. By the way, were you satisfied with him on the voyage? That depends on what you mean by that question. If you mean as a comrade, I must say no. For I do not think he has been my friend ever since the day I was foolish enough to propose to him that we should stop for 10 minutes at the Isle of Monte Cristo to settle a little dispute. I never thought to have made the suggestion, and he was quite right in refusing. If you mean as a purser, I have nothing to say against him, and I think you will be satisfied with the way in which he has discharged his duties. Thereupon the young sailor jumped onto the boat, seated himself in the stern, and ordered the oarsmen to put him ashore at the Cannebière. With a smile on his lips, Monsieur Morrel glanced after him till he saw him jump ashore. There he was immediately lost in the motley crowd that from 5 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock in the evening, collects in that famous street of the Cannebière, of which the modern Phoenicians are so proud that they say in all seriousness, and with that peculiar accent which lends so much character to what they say, if Paris owned the Cannebière, she would be a little Marseille. On turning around, the shipowner saw Danglars standing behind him. The latter, who appeared to be waiting his orders, was in reality, like him, following the movements of the young sailor. But how different was the expression in the eyes of each of those 2 men as they gazed after Dantès' retreating figure. Okay, that's chapter 1. I know there were little flubs in there pretty much everywhere. But I hope you liked it, and I hope you'll come for the next video. Bye!